Hi, this is John and Dat from Simtropolis. We're talking with Ocean Quigley today, and we're going to be talking primarily about the roads. My first question for you is, what was the goal behind unifying the roads, the water, the pipes, and the electrical lines? I was a big fan of drawing out the power lines across oceans and whatnot.
So there's so much stuff going on with this simulation right now that we decided we needed to get rid of some of the micromanagement. We got a lot of grief from people on SimCity 4 who didn't want to lay pipelines. We heard that again and again and again, that people got tired of the little fiddly bits that they had to get right, and they wanted to just sort of draw out the patterns of their city and have it all work. So since in previous SimCities everything was kind of a grid-based simulation, the networks weren't, they were important, but they weren't fundamental. In the new SimCity, where the roads are really the spine of the whole city, we figure, your city is the road network in some sense. All your buildings need to be connected to those roads in order to function, and it seemed a little extraneous to force you to put down separate networks for power and separate networks for water when the roads were really doing all that work already.
So was that the same rationale you used for tying actual zone densities to roads too? Because in the real world you can have very narrow roads but high density buildings.
So again, previous SimCities, all the zoning was network. It was just grid based. In the new SimCity, since it's all network based, we needed to do the zoning relative to the roads. So that's sort of the first starting point. The roads are the spine of the city, so all the zoning has got to be relative to the roads. Then once you're doing that, you need to come up with some controls that make sense. So we've got two widths of roads, right? We've got the roads that are 24 meters wide, and those go from dirt roads to 4-lane high-density roads, and we've got roads that are 48 meters wide, which are really avenues, and those go from the sort of boulevard style, just 4 lanes, all the way up to 6 lanes with rail lines going through. And so each one of those each road width supports full density range. So you can put down a dirt road that only supports low density, and then you can upgrade that to a medium density road that supports medium density development, and then up to a high density road that supports high density development. So each road type, each road width can support the full range of development, but the fiction is that a dirt road doesn't have all the heavy infrastructure underneath it to support a skyscraper, for example. It can really only support cottages and small factories and stuff like that. When you upgrade to a high density road, even if it's just a 24 meter wide road, the fiction is that it's got all the heavy utilities running through it. It's got the high capacity sewers, the high capacity power, and of course the traffic support to support it. And so that's the kind of the fiction. In previous SimCities, you could have zoned off in the countryside where nothing would have ever happened, nothing would have ever developed. Since all the activity in the city is relative to the roads in this new SimCity, it only makes sense really to zone along the length of the roads, and then it's just a matter of coming up with good controls for it. And we just decided that road density was the most straightforward way to do that.
Mm-hmm. So as John and I have been playing our cities, it feels like the game pushes you to upgrade your roads so you can increase densities and to feel like you're succeeding. So are these low-level roads purely a cost-benefit option for when you're starting out a new city?
It kind of depends on why you're playing the game. Some people who are playing the game to min-max population, for example, or min-max economy are going to be driven by that desire to upgrade the roads to maximum density so as to support the highest density buildings that the game has. But other people who are playing the game for, say, creative purposes, they may be building a city because they want to make some particular vision that they've got in their head, come to life in front of them. And for those people, the road density is one way of maintaining the sort of buildings that are going to grow there. So if you really don't want a city that has skyscrapers, you want to keep it as a kind of a more small town or a rural area, then you leave it with dirt roads. And if you want to keep it all at middle density, then you keep it at middle density roads. So that's just how you cap it. It's, I figure, one of the creative control options that you've got in the game.
Speaking of creative control and min-maxing the population density, what was the idea behind the overlay for when you're laying roads out, you get those little white dotted lines? What was the idea behind putting that in the game?
Sure. So going back to previous SimCities, the zone depth in those previous SimCities was always based on the grid cells, so you'd look down and you'd see 2 or 4 cells deep, and you'd say, well, stuff will develop at that distance from the road. With a new SimCity, since we're not on the grid, we have to come up with some way of showing you how far away to space roads so that you'll get optimal packing, if optimal packing is what you're after. So when you look at the road, you'll see that there's you've got a road down there. You mouse over it with your road tool, and it'll do dotted lines on either side of it, and those lines are showing you the proper spacing for putting down adjacent roads if you want either back-to-back low-density development or a single high-density development, or you can go to the further out set of roads, or the further out set of lines, which are further away, and if you put a road down there, that'll give you back-to-back high-density development. So the proper way to deal with your zoning is to first put down roads and then see what the spacing that the road guides provide is, put down adjacent roads, and then mark along the roads for where you want stuff to develop.
So, we've been having a lot of fun with the road tool, and I like how it really tries to work with you as it responds to the terrain and tries to make sense of what you're asking it to do. So the question is, will we be able to have more direct control, like making an elevator road anywhere regardless of terrain, that kind of thing?
So the first order of business is just to make it like in SimCity 4, so that you do a road draw and the road will sort of magically or automatically figure out what needs to happen in order to succeed. Does it need to do road cuts, or does it need to do fills, does it need to build tunnels or bridges, does it need to do retaining walls, whatever, in order to succeed in its draw operation. Because we want the first thing that you do to succeed. We want you to be able to start a road here, draw it over here, and get a successful road draw, even if that means that you've got to do all this civil infrastructure in order to make it succeed. There's a lot of things that would be cool to do with roads beyond that. For example, it would be really cool to have one-way roads that you could control the direction of, and it would be really cool to be able to manually tug the road up and down so that you could say, well, actually, I want to put a tunnel over here so that I can put another road on top of it. The system that we've built can be sort of extended to support that stuff, but it's not going to happen for ship. For ship, we just need to make sure that the default case of drawing out a road reliably works.
What happened to subways? They aren't in the game. They're not going to ship at with the game at the moment. What was the design reason behind that?
So the main thing to think of is that this is a full new SimCity. This isn't just an extension of SimCity 4. And so we had to rebuild every system in the game from scratch. And when it came time for mass transit, we just decided that it was kind of more interesting and kind of more valuable to people to be able to see the transportation options directly on the surface. So we opted for streetcars instead of subways. They perform the same sorts of functions that subways do, but instead of being sort of concealed beneath the ground, you can actually watch people line up and get into the streetcar, and then you can watch the streetcar go around and then drop people off. So given that we have a relatively small team to build a brand new game, it seemed like it was a more valuable feature than putting subways in.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for answering our questions. This is as you can see, I'm not a newscaster.